Welcome everyone to the third episode of Biz Group's Industry Insights series. Today we're going to be talking to Dillon, Chief Learning Architect at Axonify, about the power of technology dynamically shaping the future of learning. Welcome JD, and thank you for being with us today.
Happy to be here.
You're very, very welcome. Genuinely, I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a while. I know it's been, crikey, I think 3 or 4 years since we were sat down in Waterloo, just generally pontificating about the future of everything and how it might come together. I think all of us would have been considered on something a little bit stronger than what we were drinking had we predicted 2020. And on that note, I mean, your career has taken you through so many different environments. You've been at Disney, you've been at Kaplan, you've been at AMC, and I don't think a month goes by that I don't see your name crop up in some other podcast or other. And I'm actually chuffed to bits that you've actually started leading your own with the 80%. But while 2020 was a disruptive year, with companies and teams having to rapidly really learn how to work differently, what trends do you think will stay, and how do you think they'll impact the future of learning?
Sure. So I think one thing that's important to remember is that 2020 and 2021 thus far, right? Because it's far from over.
Yeah.
Hasn't cornered the market when it comes to disruption. So it wasn't as if we hadn't faced some versions of that type of rapid change before. It usually just doesn't happen at that speed and scale to everyone at the same time.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down for a while in the midst of the beginnings of things and ask the question about the relevance of the types of things that I was talking about for the past several years and the approaches that I was taking when I was working with organizations and doing my work every day, which is something hopefully that a lot of people did, whether it be you're running a business or you're running a team or you're supporting people from a learning and development perspective. And I'd ask, is the world changing to a degree where I have to do things differently now, and to what extreme? How do I have to learn through this experience? And what I started to recognize was that there were similarities and things that I could learn from past disruptions and past changes that I had worked through in different organizations and apply, maybe in a little bit different ways, but apply with extreme relevance in the work that we were doing at this point. So I think it's important that we take that step back and we look at how what we've done in the past may apply to the changes that are happening to us right now and then moving into the future, because change isn't going to stop. So when, quote, this is over, it's not about suddenly going backwards and thinking about things the way they were, or kind of looking for that, getting back to normal type of vibe. So a couple of things that stand out to me over the past, 12 months at this point is that I don't really remember work being this human before. We're having conversations now, even though a lot of people are struggling to get through this situation, but facing disruption head on for a year at this point. We're having conversations about the human nature of work in ways we haven't had before, about things like wellness, about things like community. And that needs to keep going, because to this point, we've been largely reactionary to keep the lights on and keep things moving forward. So how do we keep those conversations going so that we can remember that work is a human experience and not an experience about, well, how many widgets can someone sell and how many widgets come off the line and those types of things. So one, making sure the human nature of work continues to be a focus. Two, that huge conversation around preparedness, which kind of connects to what I started in saying, that change isn't going to stop. So making sure that we're always focused on putting in place the mechanisms necessary to help people be ready for what comes next. Hopefully it's not this. Hopefully it's more of a new product release, right? Or some type of disruptive industry shift. A new technology enters the space, and making sure we have the tools necessary to help people get ahead of the conversation rather than being reactionary and overly programmatic and taking 6 to 8 months to do a project in order to then try to help people catch up with the change that's happening around them. And then I think the final thing to think about is we're now living in a hybrid nature of work, depending on the type of audience that you support or type of industry that you work in. It's unrealistic to think that we're going back to a world where everyone's going to work together. And supporting a frontline team, which is where I've spent most of my career, we've kind of always lived in that reality where we're supporting hundreds of thousands of people across tens of thousands of locations, right? Now the corporate environment is going to face that same reality of distributed work and hybrid work. So making sure that we, especially in learning and development, remember that our job is to go to where the people are and to provide solutions that work within the nature of how they do their jobs every day, not force them to change and come to us. And it's something, again, we've had to react to for the past year, especially if you're supporting people that went to home to work from home. How do we kind of reimagine what we do to make sure we can go to them and fit into their world, as opposed to making them have to come to us when they need help?
So that's an interesting point.